Hi there, and welcome to another episode of African Business Stories. Africa is the only region in the world where more women than men choose to be entrepreneurs. What this says to me is that the story of business in Africa is the story of the African businesswoman. So we're on a journey of discovery to find these women and tell their stories. On the show, we will hear from female innovators and entrepreneurs building and running businesses in Africa. They will share the highs and lows of their entrepreneurial journey and lessons learned along the way. Some of these women you may know, and many you may not, but I assure you that all their stories are inspiring in their own right. My hope is that these stories will inspire you to reach for your dreams and leave a legacy for generations to come. It makes such a big difference to us if you can rate, review, and share our episodes. You can do this mainly on Apple Podcasts, and you can find us on all podcast platforms. If you're in Africa, Spotify is now available, so check us out there. And don't forget to rate, review, and share. As part of our Lessons and Legacy series, we bring you a special episode in honor of Mother's Day, which we celebrated in the US this past weekend. On the show today, I chat with Ambassador Dr. Kema Chikwe, two-time Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, former Nigerian Ambassador to Ireland, a gender equality advocate, and the founder and chairperson of the Women Leadership Institute. She shared with me some memories from her childhood and insights into her approach to parenting. She went on to reflect on her career accomplishments and the work she's currently doing to raise a critical mass of women who are leadership conscious. Let's get into it. Hi, Auntie Kema. Welcome to African Business Stories.
Thank you very much. And how are you?
Very well, thank you. So in honor of Mother's Day, here in the US, we're celebrating Mother's Day. So I wanted to use this opportunity to speak to you a little bit about your experience and maybe get some lessons for other mothers and other women. So just in terms of growing up, I mean, I know a lot about your dad, Pa Nathan Ejiogu, and your mom, who was such a great entrepreneur. And I was wondering, if you could share just some memories, some of your fond memories of growing up with two industrious parents.
Well, it was quite interesting having them as my parents. And but when you are young, you don't even appreciate all the advice your parents or the advices your parents give to you. You think they are very strict, they are old-fashioned, they are, you don't even know that you are the one that is myopic. So growing up, I grew up in a very traditional background where it was, you had to go to church every Sunday. You had to eat at a particular time, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And when I was much younger, when my father, when he was principal of the Teacher Training College, Uyo, which is now the university, happened to be the first African to hold that position. And then it was the colonial period and the colonial era. And it was like living the life of colonialism and the culture. So my father would have a siesta after work. So we, the children, were required to be very quiet and have our own siesta after lunch. And won't be tired anybody who made noise during that period.
Wow.
So it was very strict. But anyway, we tried to play a lot of pranks too. And at home, going out, visiting friends and so on wasn't very common. Our visits, most of the time, had to be arranged. And my father would ensure that the driver dropped you and the driver brought you back, even as we got older. But we tried to rebel because Like if you have a party and it would be difficult to communicate to my father that you had to attend a birthday party of a friend. So we'll set him up, we'll tell him all sorts of stories, my siblings, make up stories, and eventually secure permission to attend a party. But then if you did, he would still hover around there or want, the driver to bring you back when other people were having fun. So we didn't like it at all.
So, what would you say are some of the greatest lessons you learned from your parents?
Well, some of the lessons I learned, maybe not greatest, from my parents. One, my father wasn't very physical on his children, like in terms of discipline. He always told us stories. He used anecdotes to correct us. And it was just like that. Anything he wanted to correct us, he would tell us a story.
Right.
Like the story of the hat seller who fell asleep under the tree and the monkeys on the tree. The monkeys came down and picked up all the hat sellers' hats and wore the hats and climbed up the tree. And he woke up. He couldn't find his hats. So he was very, very upset. So he took the one he was wearing on his head and threw away. And the monkeys imitated him and threw away their own hats and he picked them up. So he taught us, a few things with that story. One, the hat seller was really tired and you can't go on and on. Sometimes you're tired. Again, monkeys were foolish because they imitation. So because they were imitating the hat seller, in the first place, they saw the hat seller wearing a hat, so they took up his hats and wore. So when he got angry and threw away the hats, they also threw away theirs. And the hat seller was victorious. These little stories he used in teaching us morals, And then my father valued friendship so much. That's another lesson I learned. Once I quarreled with my best friend in school. She wrote to my father and told my father. I was surprised. My father was going on tour on a Saturday. I was surprised when I was told my father was in the school and my father was waiting for me to come. When I got there, I saw my friends standing with my father. I was shocked. So my father asked me why I was quarreling with my friend. I was embarrassed because I didn't expect him to know. My father didn't want to say much. What he said to me was this: anybody who changes her friends like she changes her clothes must be a foolish person. You must value friendship. And he actually valued friendship. Then my mother was very, in fact, her integrity was uncommon because she didn't cover up anything you did wrong. She would discuss it openly and she would correct you. And, she was very keen on all of us learning how to cook, learning how to bake, learning how to knit. And that's for the girls.
Yeah.
But I can, the only problem I think we had growing up was that my brothers, it was, this favoring the boys was on, because my brothers didn't learn how to cook in the house. In fact, they didn't really work as hard as the girls. I don't remember any chores that were assigned to my brothers, really. And that was the time, that was the era, and that's also is one of the reasons why women like us felt that there should be equality,
Hmm.
gender equality.
Hmm.
We didn't have
Yeah.
gender equality
Yeah.
at home, you know.
Hmm.
Even though my parents made my brothers work hard in terms of academic work and so on, but I don't think I saw them sweeping anywhere in the house or cooking, which we loved to do.
How did you approach parenting compared to how you were raised? How did you have five children who, you had at very different stages in life. So how did you approach parenting your five children?
Well, um, you know, parenting, even from my parents, I've discovered that there's no ideal situation. Your
Hmm.
environment and the situation would demand the parenting. I had
Right.
my first two children, Andy and Nini, and there were just the two of them, and there was this gap between them and Somachi,
Hmm.
the third one, and gap between Somachi and NATO, and then a huge gap between
Nature.
NATO and Chukuma. You
Hmm.
see, when I had the first two, I was quite young.
Hmm.
You know, took them everywhere, played with them quite early in life. They both Andy and Nini, they were
Hmm.
exposed to doing little things for themselves, making their beds, and then Andy learned how to fix his own meal, like hot dog, simple things,
Hmm.
you know, and he would fix his meal and fix for Nini. So, unlike my family, where my brothers wouldn't fix the meal, the girls would do for them, you know. So,
Yeah.
yeah, because times had changed. And that's what I'm telling you.
Times had changed.
It matters very much the time of bringing up children, and it matters
Yeah.
the circumstances and the environment and the situation,
Hmm.
So there's no typical pattern, you know.
Hmm.
So it's just for you to adjust to each situation you find yourself in.
So, Auntie, just reflecting and looking back, is there anything you think you could have done different in raising? I mean, I know most of them and they're amazing individuals, but just looking back, is there anything you would have done different with them?
Um, I think so. I think there's certain things I should have done differently, but that is according to the individual child.
Hmm.
See,
Hmm.
the first two, I was much younger and less experienced.
Hmm.
I was in the learning process of raising a family, you know, and the age gap between us is narrower than the other two. So sometimes maybe I think maybe I did things in a way that maybe they didn't take me as seriously as they should have taken me,
Okay.
especially in trying to enforce discipline. And I would cave in.
Hmm.
But now, answering the question you asked, I wish I didn't cave in some
Hmm.
circumstances. I wish I was resilient, consistent, and, you know, insisting on a particular standard.
Thank you so much for sharing. There's so much to learn when you have people reflect and look back. Just moving forward a little, what would you say are some of your greatest accomplishments? I mean, you built a fantastic career in politics and in the education space, but what would you say, are some of your greatest accomplishments? And is there anything else you're looking to achieve?
Well, one thing I would tell you is that I worked hard to get myself where I got to. It wasn't easy getting a PhD. It wasn't easy even getting a first degree, second degree, and a PhD.
Right.
But I did that as background, as a springboard to where I was heading to. I wanted to be respected. And in our society, if you're introduced as Dr. So and so, even though it's been bastardized now, everybody answers on their own. They just, in Nigeria, any woman is Dr. Mrs. And it's funny. And some people have worked very hard to achieve it. So I achieved it. And then what next? What next?
Yeah.
So I started my writing career, my primetime publishing company. I have a series of books I've written and published before getting into politics. But getting into politics, I went into women organizations because what the greatest motivation then was the gender issue. I told you about us and my brothers. That was typical. Okay, now, to recognize women. Then from there, I discovered that talking about gender equality, this, that, without women having the force was a waste of time. You had to be in government. And to be in government, you had to be in politics. During the military era, you would just be appointed. But you're appointed, you can hardly make any change. There were a few revolutionists, women, then. But being in government and taking a decision, policy decision, was different. So I went into politics and eventually got to the point I did. So became Minister of Transport, Minister of Aviation, Chairman of JAM, and happened to be the first woman in Nigeria to be appointed as minister to an infrastructure ministry, transport and aviation. The first woman and only woman that has served as chairman of JAM before I became ambassador. Prior to that, when I was younger, I had held other positions, the Nigerian Students' Loans Board. I was a member of the governing board. I told you about Adaeze on the state level, and so many other appointments, on the state and national level. Now, this exposed me to a lot of experiences about gender issue. And it's not a story anybody would tell me because I know what I encountered as a woman to get to where I got to and to sustain the position. It wasn't easy at all. So when women talk about mainstreaming, empowerment, and so on, it's real. And during this time, this period, this era from the Beijing conference to now, to the MDGs and so on and so forth, you can see that a lot of women have been motivated, a lot of them. But still,
Yes.
up to today, the men are taking the decision. And any decision in the country, in our country here, the population of women, it's almost like 50-50 with men. So men are taking decision for 50% of the population. It doesn't go well. Because they will take those decisions with male experience, with chauvinism. They'll be looking at their wives at home where they are kings and lords and taking decisions for the generality of women. You see, so I have been an activist, and luckily I got into these positions. Now, I am very, very happy that I look back and then projecting into the future of what is the gap? Women organizations have done very well,
Yeah.
NGOs, and so on and so forth, for gender mainstreaming, all sorts of agenda for women, nationally and internationally. I saw a gap. Because look at our National Assembly. We have not achieved anything near the 35% of Beijing recommendation. No.
No.
In fact, I don't think we've gone beyond. I doubt that we've reached 10% in Nigeria. Some countries in Africa have achieved the feat of exceeding the 35%, even 50%. But we have not in Nigeria and some other African countries. So I also did a brief research. We're doing a bigger one now. So that there is no university in Nigeria, actually, that has women's studies as a department. I don't know, maybe they're new now, as of the time I did it. So we have to institutionalize the gender issues, because what has happened over the years has shown us that it is very important that 50% of the population cannot progress, the country cannot progress while decisions are being made for 50% by people who don't have their experience, who don't even know what they need to be where they ought to be. We also have a lot of problems in governance and leadership in Africa, in Nigeria. We're being consumed. We also have experienced the fact that any position you have given women, at least majority, there are a few problems here and there, but women take up the challenge to do well in a position you give to them. And so I believe that women, in order to change the society, something dramatic has to happen. And that will be having more women in leadership, in governance. So I decided to start the Women Leadership Institute, because I believe we should institutionalize the gender issue in Nigeria and Africa. It's a gap that must be filled. And I believe from what we are doing, we will raise the consciousness for universities, for tertiary institutions, to consider women's studies as a critical aspect of intellectual development. That we give women the confidence to be able to mainstream themselves. We need it. And that's what the Women Leadership Institute, which I founded in 2017, and we resumed our master classes in 2018. And I'm very proud of what we have done so far, because most of our students, we have changed, giving a new orientation to the women who have attended our master classes. You need that reorientation. You'll be a businesswoman, you'll be a bank manager, you'll be doctor, you'll be lawyer, but you need to acquire leadership skill for this constructive change in society and in governance. So that's what Women Leadership Institute is about. It's not an NGO. We have very serious financial challenges, but that has not stopped us, because our aim is to continue to be consistent, to train women intellectually and practically till we raise a critical mass of women who are leadership conscious. It's not just talking about it. It's about designing a framework, a curriculum, a package that our students go home with, and then monitoring them. And most of the resource people in the institute are role models. In fact, recently, one of our resource people was appointed the Vice Chancellor of FUTO, Federal University of Technology, Owerri. Another one was appointed last week, Vice Chancellor in Delta. I'm just, one of our resource, a man this time, is a Vice Chancellor in Kaduna, one of the university there. You know, so it's just to show you the quality of resource people we work with. So the students, we encourage them to further engage with the resource people. And it's inspiring when you hear, oh, the resource person who taught me at Women Leadership Institute on masterclass on entrepreneurship or masterclass on IT. The last one we had was on IT. And it was amazing. Many of the women now are online doing their businesses, online doing their politics, helping their mentors and their sponsors. And that's what we want to achieve. And you know, technology is one thing that gives anybody confidence, especially in modern times. Since last year, since the pandemic, you can see that technology took over. Schools that could not go online closed permanently for a year or more. But schools that had the resources or that could go online were online, and they continued with their learning.
Yeah.
We had about 4 webinars during the last year and this year. You know, and connecting people all over the world, being part of it. It gives a lot of confidence when a woman in Owerri is interacting with a woman in Argentina. Even telling the story to her peers. I mean, it boosts the morale for women. You know, so this is what Women Leadership Institute is about. And so for the question you asked me, I think is one of the most remarkable things I think I have done so far. The other positions I was appointed. People identified what I could do, the qualities in me, and gave me appointments. But this, I believed in myself, what I could do, that I would love to develop the leadership skills of women in Nigeria and Africa.
Auntie, thank you so much for that. We really wish you all the best with the Women's Leadership Institute. I think that it's a fantastic thing you're doing, not just for Nigeria, but across the continent. It's one thing for us to want positions of leadership, but how can we take it when we don't have the skills? So I think the work the Institute is doing is necessary work. Auntie, my last question, is in terms of advice. I normally like to end with some advice. So I'm wondering what advice you would give to women who are trying to balance motherhood and building their careers and building their businesses in Africa.
Well, the advice I'll give to women is to be introspective about their circumstances. Sometimes women tend to compare themselves with others. No two situations are the same. It's good to compare in certain areas. But when it comes to parenting, you look at the peculiar circumstance of your home. Some are single mothers, some are widows, some have husbands that care very much, and some have husbands that don't care very much. But you cannot destroy your home because of someone else's attitude. So one, in parenting, you do what is convenient for you and your family. Honestly, send your children to a school that you believe will give you peace of mind, rest of mind, financially and otherwise. Don't put yourself under stress, because if you are under stress about the children, you cannot even achieve anything for yourself. So you choose what is best for your family, what is best for the child. And the structure at home must be right. Things have changed. So what I would advise in parenting now is that please don't give yourself too much stress in the balancing act. Don't give yourself unnecessary. Do what is convenient and practical and what you can afford. Honestly, if you look for something that is beyond your means, it can be very, very frustrating. So that's what I can tell you, my dear, that it's very, very important to review your circumstances. But you must have a vision. I had a vision, and I wanted to live my dreams of one, having higher education, doing my PhD. I was working, I was a broadcaster, I was a radio producer. And you know what? Sometimes I would take them to the studio to record my programs.
Oh, wow.
So my children experienced all sorts of everywhere I was, they were there, I would take them to the studio. I felt more comfortable, with them around me. I record my programs, and you see the issue of balancing for active mothers is structure. If you have a lot of things to do, you must structure them, and have your framework, design it, and know when to do what. And again, look at the outcome. There are certain things you do that would be useless. So why do them? So you cut off the irrelevant things. There are certain things that I had to sacrifice for me to balance the activities I was engaged in and look after my children. You see, I believe that children need a lot of attention. They really need a lot of attention. I've never believed that other people would take care of my children the way I would take care of them. And the academic side of raising them too, I knew they needed a lot of, support too. So we used to engage teachers after school program, to teach them. And what I did not compromise was weekends. Take them out to swim, for lunch. In fact, when we were in Enugu, sometimes my husband and I just decided to take them to Nike Lake Hotel for the weekend, and we check into the hotel for the weekend.
Nice.
Yes, so it will be easy for them to swim and do things and so on. Because it's stimulating for children when they interact or when they move around. So these are intellectually stimulating activities. They may look social,
Right.
but they're very, very important in raising children.
Auntie, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much.
It's been interesting.
Thank you so much for listening. If you're not already subscribed, please do so on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And don't forget to leave us a review so we know how we're doing. I'm Akego Okoye, and you have been listening to African Business Stories.